was celebrated all over the world. So today we'll start this program, our lecture, with a hymn, a stotra, dedicated to Acharya Shankara, and our Shubha is there, so she will sing for us. No.
जय भगवन् जय शंकर विद्याकल्पतरो निर्मथितश्रुतिसागर जय जय भुवन गुरो जय देव जय भगवन् जय शंकर विद्याकल्पतरो निर्मथितश्रुतिसागर जय जय भुवन गुरो जय देव धर्मस्थापन हेतोर्लीलातनुधारिन् लोकानुग्रह हेतोर्ब्रह्मणि सन्न्यासिन् कल्युद्भवनानाविध पाखण्डध्वंसिन् अद्वैतामृतवृष्ट्या जडजीवोद्धारिन् जय देव जय भगवन् जय शंकर विद्याकल्पतरो निर्मथितश्रुतिसागर जय जय भुवन गुरो जय देव श्रुतिशिरसस्तत्त्वानामेकस्त्वं वेत्ता परपक्षाणां परिरिव विदितस्त्वं भेत्ता संशेतेर्युक्तिबलादेकस्त्वं छेत्ता त्वद्भाषामृतपुष्टः को नु जनः खेत्ता जय देव जय भगवन् जय शंकर विद्याकल्पतरो निर्मथितश्रुतिसागर जय जय भुवन गुरो जय देव शारदयापि नुतं त्वां स्तोतुमलङ्कोऽहं मर्शय मे त्वसमञ्जसमक्षरसंदोहं स्पर्शमणे स्वर्णीकुरु मां मलिनं लोहं स्थित्वा मे हृद्यनिशं वारय मम मोहं जय देव जय भगवन् जय शंकर विद्याकल्पतरो निर्मथितश्रुतिसागर जय जय भुवन गुरो जय देव त्वच्चरितानुध्यानादाचारे शुद्धिं त्वद्भाष्यश्रवणादप्यनघामिह बुद्धिं विन्दे मत्त्वन्मार्गाश्रयणात् पुण्यर्थिं देहि गुरो करुणाघन निःश्रेयस सिद्धिं जय देव जय भगवन् जय शंकर विद्याकल्पतरो निर्मथितश्रुतिसागर जय जय भुवन गुरो जय देव निर्मथितश्रुतिसागर जय जय भुवन गुरो जय देव जय देव Thank you.
Thank you, Shobha, for presenting so beautiful song. So let us start today's regular talk with the pranam mantra to Acharya Shankara. Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutrabhasho Krito Vande Bhagavanto Punaha Punah Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Padam Shankaram Loka Shankaram. Salutations again and again to Lord Shiva in the form of Sri Shankaracharya and Lord Vishnu in the form of Veda Vyasa, who were the authors of Sutra and Bhashya. Salutations to the compassionate abode of the Vedas, Smritis and Puranas, known as Shankara Bhagavat Pada, who makes the world auspicious. Today here we are gathered on a special occasion. A few days ago, the birth anniversary of eminent spiritual leader, philosopher and what not, the great poet Shankaracharya, was celebrated in different parts of the world. Today, this Sunday, we will contemplate a little on his life and work. As a lion itself understands a lion, other animals or human beings don't understand them. So, we do not understand Acharya Shankara as Swami Vivekananda understands him. We'll begin today's discussion with some quotes from Swami Vivekananda about Shankaracharya. And there is a special need for this thinking in all of our lives. By meditating on these extraordinary lives, our minds are enhanced, enriched. The personalities like Shankaracharya are our torch-bearers in human civilization. Our civilization has been enriched by the contribution of their lives. So to remember their lives is to express our gratitude to them. On him, Swami Vivekananda wrote, "It has been declared that at the age of 16, he had completed all his writings. The marvelous boy Shankaracharya arose. The writings of this boy of 16 are the wonders of the modern world. And so was the boy. He wanted to bring back the Indian world to its pristine purity." And again, in a letter comparing his philosophical standpoint and spirit with other philosophers, he wrote to Swami Akhandananda. The letters, I think, February 1890. You may get this letter in the letters of Swami Vivekananda. So he wrote while comparing. So it is interesting. The letter is very, I think it will create some interest for the students of philosophy and I think students of history also. So anyhow, we are reading some portion, only that the portion glorifying Shankara. But that of Shankara, Swamiji wrote, but that of Shankara, how far more grand and rational. Buddha and Kapila are always saying the world is full of grief and nothing but that flee from it. A, for your life do, is happiness altogether absent here? It is a statement of the nature of what the Brahma says. The world is full of happiness. There is grief, forsooth, but what can be done? Perchance, some will suggest that grief itself will appear as happiness, when you become used to it by constant suffering. Shankara does not take this line of argument. He says, Sannapi asannapi, bhinnapi avinnapi. This world is and is not, manifold yet one. I shall unravel its mystery. I shall know whether grief be there or anything else. I do not flee from it as from a bugbear. I will know all about it as to the infinite pain that attains its search. Well, I am embracing it in its fullest measure. Am I a beast that you frighten me with happiness and misery, decay and death, which are but the outcome of the senses? I will know about it, will give up my life for it. There is nothing to know about it, this world. Therefore, if there be anything beyond this relative existence, what the Lord Buddha has designated as prajnaparam, the transcendental, if such there be, I want that alone. Whether happiness attends it or grief, I do not care. What a lofty idea, how grand. So I should say, the last lines is not Shankara's word. It was from Vivekananda's pen. So here we see that Swamiji's mind, as if, has become one with Shankara's mind. They understand each other better. And we hope we are not wrong while saying so, because somewhere else Swami Vivekananda said about some kind of vision he had in his childhood. So he wrote about that. Shankaracharya had caught the rhythm of the Vedas, the national cadence. Indeed, I always imagine that he had some vision such as mine when he was young, and recovered the ancient music that way. Anyway, his whole life's work is nothing but that, the throbbing of the beauty of the Vedas and the Upanishads. And I think perhaps you may know, or I can share about that vision. Swamiji once shared about this vision to his Guru Bhai's brother monks. As if one day, Swamiji in that vision, he saw like that thousands of years ago, somewhere in India, on the bank of mighty Saraswati river, some old sages were preparing themselves for the ritualistic prayer. Maybe it was dawn, maybe it was twilight, maybe. But that atmosphere was like that, calm and serene. And those sages were chanting the hymns from the Vedas in a strange rhythm. Those rhythms left an ineffaceable impression on Swamiji's mind. So perhaps he is saying about this vision. So when he wrote that, indeed I always imagine that he had some vision such as mine when he was young. Anyhow, today we do not propose to dwell at length on the life of Shankara, except in so far as it helps to illustrate the main theme of today's speech. As for that, the life of Shankara, in its merely outward bodily incident, may be told in a paragraph. But the quantity and quality of thought and achievement that he packed into the short span of his life of 32 years have earned for him a place among the world's immortals. Today, our minds are staggered at the thought that so much could be achieved by one single individual in so short a time. It speaks volumes for the burning motives within him, moving him to work incessantly for human betterment and welfare. Conscious of a great message that he was to deliver and the mission that he was to fulfill in this country, we find Shankara, while yet a boy, leaving his home with a firm resolve to bend all his energies and resources towards that end. If we are to appreciate his work, we have to capture an understanding of the climate of thought in which he lived and functioned. He is a remarkable specimen of humanity of those times. if we can get a close view of these two things, the environment and the personality, we shall be able to assess the type of work done by him and see whether we have any lessons to learn from his life and work. Possessed of extraordinary powers, this young boy, highly intelligent and deeply conscious of his mission, has worked wonders in the cultural and religious field of the world. Nowadays, every student of Vedanta is familiar with the name of Shankara, who lived and propagated Vedanta in India nearly 1200 years back. Shankara is looked upon by millions of Indians as a great teacher of divine right. And here we shall briefly touch upon the main events of his life, though very little is known of his intensely active but very brief life on earth. The students of Vedanta, particularly of monistic Vedanta, known as Advaita Vedanta, is familiar with the thought of Shankara. True indeed, for Advaita Vedanta and Shankara are inseparable. And one cannot be thought of without the other. Advaita and Shankara have become synonymous and will forever remain inseparable and associated with each other. Advaita Vedanta is quite often referred to as Shankara Vedanta also, indicating the power and influence of the personality of Shankara in interpreting and propagating this ancient Upanishadic philosophy of Advaita. During these 1200 years, since the time of Shankara, the philosophy of Vedanta, as expounded by him, has taken longer and longer strides, and silently traversed to distant lands of the globe, imperceptibly working on the life and thought of numerous people, transforming their lives and providing spiritual solace and comfort them. Or even at present, the circle of admirers and adherents of Vedanta is ever widening day after day. If one enter upon any discussion of Vedanta, he cannot do without reference to Shankara and his works. Whether Vedanta is lived and taught, there is bound to be the spiritual presence of Shankara. Whenever one thinks of Shankara, the traditional image of the great teacher, young and brilliant, sitting under the spreading banyan tree, expounding his doctrines to his disciples who were older than himself, rises before one's mental eye and commands devotion and veneration. Shankara lives in his works, in his philosophical expositions and treatises, as well as in his devotional prayers and hymns to the various gods and goddesses. He has immortalized himself by writing those thoughtful and penetrating commentaries on the major Upanishads, the Brahma Sutra and the Bhagavad Gita, the triple source book of Vedanta. We call them Prasthanatraya also. His commentaries are noted for their profundity and philosophical as well as spiritual insight, beauty of language, clarity, and simplicity of presentation. Shankara became a model to all the later day commentators and interpreters of the sacred scriptures. Vedanta is claimed to be Hinduism at its best, and Shankara is undoubtedly the grandest and the most rational interpreter of Vedanta. In order to fully understand and appreciate the contribution of Shankara in the realm of Indian philosophical thought, we have to turn our attention to the religio, philosophic, and little bit of political background that obtained in India at the time of or before his advent. First, the first group, there were the Mimamsakas, who believed in the supremacy of the ritualistic portion of the Vedas, who spent their time and energy in performing those sacrifices and rituals and propagating the philosophy underlying them. A reaction against the Mimamsakas had already set in by the birth of Buddhism, which fought against the practice of rituals, ceremonies, and sacrifices of the Mimamsakas. This is one of the schools of the 6 philosophical system of Indian thought. Secondly, the second group, there were the Buddhists themselves. Although Buddhism, are originally presented by Buddha, was aimed at weaning people away from sacerdotalism and giving them a pure, ethical, and spiritual religion, it gradually drifted away from the original path. In the course of the centuries that followed, Buddhism degenerated into a hopeless mess. Despite its grand and high philosophy, a mess full of horrible rituals and practices. Even in philosophy, several systems and subsystems developed, ranging from absolute and uncompromising idealism on the one hand to poor realism and ritualism on the other. We are not talking about the purer form, the purest form that preached by Buddha. It was, I think 600 BC maybe, Buddha came. So already more than 1,000 years passed. So we are talking about that form of Buddhism, which was existing during the time of Shankara. So added to these two, there was the third group, the Naiyayikas, or logicians, who had developed an intricate philosophy based on the power of words and the subtlety of logic. It was all head without heart, all intellect without any emotion, brilliant as the system was, so far as its logical development and intellectual attainment were concerned. It was undoubtedly brilliant. It could not offer comfort and consolation to the heart of man. The logicians remained in the air, in the rarefied air at that. They could not touch the ground, the hard ground of reality. They did not help the common man who sought comfort and consolation from religion and philosophy. That was the triangle of forces in the religio-philosophic scene of India that obtained at the time before the advent of Shankara. The Mimamsakas, who were ritual-ridden, the Naiyayikas, with their high-flown logic, which had no relation to life, here or hereafter, and Buddhism, which had fallen on evil days. In the medley of these triple forces and the consequent confusion that arose in the mind of the common man with belief and faith, the pure religion of the Hindus having its source in the Upanishads, spiritual life based on unshakable faith, yearning devotion, profound conviction, and indomitable will for investigating truth, that religion was on the wane. And again, the political situation. As it was happened so often in the history of India, the country was divided into a congeries of little states on the death of the last Buddhist sovereign, Harshavardhana, or Harsha, who had brought about some sort of political unity of India by bringing these states under his empire. The political equilibrium also was disturbed. And India, as we can say Bharatabarsha, in their own the term, as they call their country, again became divided into small states, fighting with each other without any common loyalty to unite them. Thus, politically, culturally, and religiously, there was no central rallying point. It was at such a time that the mastermind of Shankara set to work to produce unity in the field of religion, culture, and philosophy, leaving the political aspect of it to be worked out by future generations. But even what he had undertaken was a gigantic task for a single individual. Diversity, and we should remember his age again and again. So we'll come after some point. The diversity of faiths has been the religious tradition of India from time immemorial. That is why in Vedic religion we found a federation of faiths. Ranganathan Maharaj used to love to use this term. the Federation of Faiths, in which people professing diversity of faiths in the individual lives pay homage and owe allegiance to one common source of spiritual inspiration. Unity in diversity in matters religious has been the characteristic of India. For the people of India believe that truth is one, and the sages describe it in different ways. The goal is one, and the paths to it are many, and so. No teacher works against this tradition. Shankara too worked along the line of accepted tradition, and without destroying the individuality and integrity of the prevalent faiths, he provided a common rallying point to the people in the great philosophy of Advaita Vedanta. But before we come to a consideration of Shankara's work and of his philosophic thought, we may take a glimpse into his life, which was very brief. He lived only for 32 years, and it is amazing to see what he achieved during that short period. The life of Shankara, as it has come down to us, is full of legends and miracles. From out of these stories and miraculous accounts, modern scholars have been able to extricate some facts about his life and work. Shankara is believed to have lived towards the end of the 18th century and the beginning of the 9th. The general accepted date is from AD 788 to 820 AD. That makes it 32 years. The nativity of Shankara was in a small village called Kaladi in southern part of India in Kerala state, nearer the western coast in the Indian peninsula. He hailed from an orthodox Nambudri Brahmana family. His father died while Shankara was still young, and he grew up under the tender care of his loving widowed mother. He was a precocious boy, and from his very young age, he had a strong inclination to embrace the life of renunciation and lead the life of a sannyasin. It is said that when, in India, in Buddha's life also, you can find that kind of thing. When a child is born, the astrologers come. Buddha's life also it is there. Some, I think, remember, sage Asita came. So here also, when the astrologers came, and they were full in joy to see all those things, that whatever astrology provides, the graha nakshatra and rashis. It is not exact translation like planet and all those things, a different kind of thing, calculation. They saw it is a rare kind of horoscope we found. But after some time, they became silent. So when his father, Shankara's father, Shiva Guru was his name, and mother, Vishishta Devi, they called. So when they found what is this, why, just a few minutes ago, the faces were just beaming of astrology. Now what happened? Then when they asked them, so they told, we found that the child will not live long. So how many years? It says it is 8 years. But we found that in 8 years, there's a possibility to live up to 32 years. But in 8 years, after 16 years, there is a risk of death. It may come like that. So it was the background. So anyhow, Shiva Guru passed away when Shankara was still young. So he was grown up under the loving care of his mother. Now what happened? Shankara was an intelligent boy. He went to his guru's, that school, that ashrama, and while reading, he understood that without experiencing the supreme truth and living this body is disastrous for a human life, human birth. So we should attain love. But what to do? I have only 8 years in my hand. What I will do with this much of time? So in his mind, he's always thinking about that monasticism to become a sannyasi, renounce the world. So, but then his loving mother was in his way of embracing the life he loved so dearly. For how would she allow her only son to leave her and go away as a sannyasi? But something happened in that time. So, by God's will, some incidents took place, for the Shankara's mother could no longer keep him in the house. It is said that we can stay a little bit story also. So, once it happened, he was repeatedly requesting his mother that, "Mother, please leave me so that I can go somewhere else to do my tapas and all those things." But one day, there was a river. It's called Aluai or Aluai kind of river, Kerala. So he went to take bath, and suddenly one what you call crocodile, it attacked him, and his mother also present in the bank of the river. But and there is a tradition in monasticism. You can receive that vow of sannyasa if you resolute to do. It means that it called antya sannyasa. In the last moment of your life, you can mentally you can accept. Now I am taking the vow of sannyasa, to renounce. I have to the resolution to renounce this world. It is called antya sannyasa. It is it is not nothing about some ceremony is needed. Only just resolution. Now I became a sannyasi and renouncing the world. This is called like. So this kind of thought came into Shankara's mind. So he cried to his mother, "Now, mother, give me permission," because in their family only two are there, his mother and he. So please give me. So mother, now what to do? Though it was not his that wish to do that, but she found that now it is really the last moment. So this boy is struggling for life, but nothing is happening. So she gave that permission, and thus he took the sannyasa. But what happened after that? As some villagers, some fishermen were present, and they are trying to catch fish. So they was trying hard. Now it may be that God's will maybe, or it happened that crocodile left the boy. Now with great effort, the villagers took him in the bank, or he himself maybe. But that was the incident. Now there is a beautiful thing that happened when he returned to his house. So he did not want to enter his house. It is said in old tradition, Indian kind of tradition, but still it is there. A sannyasi will live under a tree or a hermitage, not his own home, family. So he was reluctant to enter his house. So his mother told that, "Come on, my boy." So, but he told, "No, I have taken some vow. I cannot enter." So this, that laughed was truthfulness. What I have taken, we can find this kind of thing in Sri Ramakrishna also. So you can remember that in the sacred thread ceremony in Sri Ramakrishna's life, it happened. Say, and it is a old village custom kind of thing that after taking that sacred thread ceremony, that a Brahmin should undergo that process. So one of that villager, that her name was Dhani Kamarani, we call. So before the sacred ceremony, it is a custom that after the ceremony, the boy will go and will beg for some food from somebody. So it is said that he will take alms only from Brahmin. some higher caste of the society. But he was young, Sri Ramakrishna was young, and he told once, long ago, during conversation in light talks, that okay, I will take my first arm from you. So we found that after when that sacred ceremony it happened, so everybody came to give for alms. But Sri Ramakrishna, then Gadadhar, was steady. No. I already give my word to Dhani, that lower caste woman. I will take first arm from him. So though still he was young, I think around maybe 7, 9, it say that in 9, 7 or 11 years, that generally Brahmin boys generally take this kind of, still he is young. So he was stick to that resolution, and he took that first arm from that Dhani, that from the lady. So here also we find Shankara, young boy of I think must be around less than 8, but he was that steady in his resolution. No, I will sit outside. I will stay here. But what to do? Ultimately, he took that monasticism, that vows of sannyasa. So we found men who are born with a mission cannot be tied down by earthly bondages. They are sure to break them away and proclaim themselves free to fulfill the work for which they incarnate. Oh, I should add one thing. And before the leaving the house, so he gave some word to his mother also. So don't worry, mother. So they have some kind of property. So they handed over to their close relatives so that they can look after his mother. And he told that, don't worry, mother, when your end, that last moment of your life come, I will come. I will serve you. And I will do the last rite. And again here also, a sannyasi traditionally should not attend this kind of thing, a formal kind of thing. But this is his matri bhakti, that his devotion to his mother. At the same time, you can in Swami Vivekananda again, you will find that duty to his family and a higher mission, that is calling. So that kind of thing always come. So they also had that kind of dilemma, but they choose the, for the, we call in Buddha Swad, Bahujana Hitaya, Bahujana Sukhaya, for the pleasure of, for the many, to serve many. They embrace this kind of mission. So here also we find that it is not that he was a heartless person, it is not that. So to clear that point, I just discuss some of his, the struggle, mental struggle. Shankara, having got away from his home, was now free to go and equip himself in order to carry out the mission that awaited him and which was slowly dawning upon him. Having departed from his home, he was in search of a teacher under whom he could study and master the ancient Vedic lore as well as other systems of philosophy. In his wanderings, he came to the banks of the Narmada, a river, where he found his guru in the venerable person of Sri Govindapada, who was himself a great yogi and a disciple of Sri Gaurapada, the well-known author of the Karikas and the Mandukya Upanishad. As the Katha Upanishad puts in, wonderful was the teacher and equally wonderful was the student. Extraordinary was the brilliance of Shankara, and in an unbelievably short time he mastered all his guru had to teach. Having completed his education under Sri Govindapada and obtained his blessings, he set out on his great work, a mere boy just in his teens. First, he went to Benares, Kashi, the recognized great seat of learning, where one had to obtain recognition from the scholars if one were to embark upon a new mission in one's life, and as a teacher of religion and philosophy. There he met various contending forces, which were striking to the latter and not to the spirit of the sacred scriptures, thus eating into the very vitals of the national religious life. He made the most powerful adversaries and opponents among the Mimamsakas and the Naiyayiks of the time. He successfully won over them all by demolishing their theories and establishing the supremacy of Vedantic thought. Very soon, disciples began to gather around him, and among them were some of the greatest scholars of the day who had met Shankara in philosophical dispute, and who, having been defeated by him, had accepted his philosophical views as well as discipleship under him. That is how it came to be that some of his disciples were older than Shankara himself. So these are beautiful stories actually. Kumarila Bhatta, meeting with Kumarila Bhatta, great life. But it's not possible to discuss all those things. In some occasion we can discuss their mindset, different kind of mindset. So anyhow, the environment that obtained at the time of Shankara is of interest to us today even. Those were times when men paid homage to intellect and character. Those were days when men of culture and intellect and the rare ones with new ideas were respected all over the country. In a sense, this has been so throughout Indian history. All fights were on the intellectual level, on the ideological level. It speaks of the high culture of a society where problems are solved not by the sword, but by discussion. It was this democratic attitude that prevailed at the time of Shankara. People were invited to hear the exposition of a new idea, and the subsequent discussion saw the opposition of idea to idea and the meeting of argument by argument. We have, out of these clashes of ideas, the emergence of a rational philosophy. We find at the time of Shankara, people's minds were ever ready to capture new ideas. There was the intellectual curiosity to capture truth. This attitude and mood is the high water mark of culture. We sadly miss that today. We try to impose an idea by the force and not by an appeal to the intellect and understanding. It is about this time also that Shankara began writing his commentaries on the original source books of Vedanta, with a view not only to propagating the monistic, the non-dualistic philosophy of Vedanta, but also to establishing that philosophy on firm foundations. Preaching and discussing, as well as writing commentaries, went on side by side. The literary life of Shankara was confined to a very short period. He wrote commentaries on the Upanishads first. Praise of Vishnu. Besides writing expository annotation on books like Vishnu Sahasranama. Vishnu Sahasranama is a praise of Vishnu, containing 1,000 names in his praise, and the Sanata Sujatiya, a philosophical treatise included in the Mahabharata. And then we have him writing his clear and thoughtful commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, that immortal song of God, which is also bodily incorporated in the Mahabharata. We also see him writing a number of other treatises on Vedanta, independent works inspired by and expounding the philosophy of Advaita, works like Viveka Chudamani, Atma Bodha, Upadesha Sahasri, etc., etc. And again, he composed numberless sutras in praise of the various important gods and goddesses of the Hindu pantheon. And he completed his magnum opus, his masterly commentary on the Brahma Sutra. The tradition says when he was barely 16, so that most of his philosophical works were completed when he was just in his teens. It was during this period that Shankara one day had a strange experience and felt that his mother's end was drawing near. In compliance with the promise he had made to her at the time of leaving his home, he came back to his mother during her last moments. The end came, and the dear old mother of Shankara passed away, having performed the last rites to his deceased mother, as the tradition has it, and thus fulfilling his promise. Though it was against the tradition for a sannyasin to perform the last rites for any relative, Shankara was now free to embark upon his mission and to campaign in the name of Vedanta. Like a lion of Vedanta, like a Vedanta Keshari, we say in Sanskrit, he traveled the length and breadth of the country. This brilliant young monk, followed by aged disciples, all great scholars themselves, thundering the message of Vedanta and liberating the pure religion of the Vedas and the Upanishads from the hideous tradition of superstition and meaningless practice. Another of his great contribution to India particularly was his grand conception of our cultural and national unity. As an emblem of this conception, he established 4 mathas, or monastic headquarters, at the 4 corners of India. Sringeri in the south, Puri in the east, Badrikashrama in the north, and Dwaraka in the west, and put each of them under the charge of each one of his 4 capable disciples. He entrusted them with the task of continuing the work that he had initiated. Each of these monasteries happily is flourishing to this day. Despite the various vicissitudes of history each had to face, and continues to be a powerhouse of spiritual thought and inspiration. Thus completing the mission of his life, Shankara departed from the arena of this world at the tender age of 32, after lifting India out of the morass into which she had fallen and establishing her ancient philosophy of Vedanta on a sound and secure basis. Now, what is the philosophy of Shankara? Let us talk a little bit of it. As already we have said, Shankara and Advaita have become synonymous. And by Shankara Vedanta is meant Advaita Vedanta. Of all thinkers in the realm of Indian philosophic thought, Shankara is perhaps the most misunderstood also. Although it can be said without any hesitation that throughout his commentaries and other extensive writings, he has nowhere been ambiguous. Shankara's writings are noted for their lucidity as well as clarity. This misunderstanding is chiefly due to the central idea of his philosophy, the theory of Maya or Mayavada, as it is popularly referred to, which cannot shield any human weakness. It is our attachment to the things of the world, our worldly mindedness, which obscures our vision, and we try to interpret things in a way that fits in with our subjective beliefs and likings. To put the theory of Maya in the simplest terms, it is illusoriness of the individual self. That is the central notion of Shankara's Vedanta. And every other vital tenet of his philosophy, Brahman as the sole reality, the object as false, Maya as neither real nor unreal, Ishvara as Brahman in reference to Maya, Moksha or liberation through knowledge of Brahman, and as the identity of self with Brahman, may be regarded as an elaboration of this single notion. By illusoriness, Shankara never means illusion or non-existence. He only repudiates the apparent character of the given relative reality, including the individual self, and says that what appears to be real from our relative or mundane standpoint is not finally or ultimately real. The only fundamental reality, which is the most intimate in the individual self and which is the most ultimate as the universal self, is the reality of Brahman, the Absolute, and all else is a superimposition on it. Shankara bases his view on the absoluteness and oneness of the ultimate reality on the teachings of the Upanishads. The Upanishads state in clear and unambiguous terms that truth is one only, without a second, that Brahman is truth knowledge and infinite. And the Brahman is all this. It is Brahman alone that pervades everything. It is He alone that permeates and animates everything. He is the wrap and woof of the fabric of the manifold manifestation. He is there behind every knowledge. It is because of His presence that all comprehension as well as all apprehension is possible and does take place. He stimulates and enlightens our understanding. In creation, all activity goes on in a regulated manner because He is there behind as the guiding factor. To sum up, we may briefly state the findings of Shankara in his study of Vedanta. Number one, knowledge or consciousness, absolute, is the reality that is Brahman. Number two, it is one, indivisible, without a second, having no difference of any kind in itself. Number three, the jiva or individual self is essentially the same as Brahman, as it is, therefore, self-illumined, unlimited, and ever free. Its apparent finitude and the consequent effects are due to avidya or ajnana, and as such, they are unreal. The sense of personality and individuality is bondage. That of universality is freedom. In freedom, this apparent finite individuality expands into the infinitude of Brahman. Number four, it is Brahman alone that appears as the world. It appears so because of avidya. The world has only a phenomenal or a relative reality. It has no absolute reality. Its reality is only in Brahman. 5. Brahmanhood is realized by the knowledge of the absolute identity of the jiva and Brahman. The Upanishadic dictum, Tat Tvam Asi, that is, that thou art, reveals this identity. And the last 6. Mukti or moksha is nothing but realization of this identity. Nothing new happens in the state of freedom. All spiritual practice is directed towards the removal of the manifold layers of avidya, which are heaped on the purity and perfection of the self. This mukti can be attained in this very life, which called Jivan Mukti. Vedanta is both transcendental and immanental. Its transcendent aspect denies all multiplicity as neti neti, not this, and establishes that Brahman is the only reality, the one substratum of all existence. It is Advayam, one without a second. All variety that we see and experience are superimpositions on the substratum and therefore ultimately not real, that is, in the absolute sense. No doubt, this aspect of Vedanta has been emphasized more in Sri Shankara's Bhashyas because he had to contend with the Vijnanavadi and Shunyavadi schools of Buddhism. He used their strong logic but put it on a firm positive foundation, which had its roots in the Upanishads, thus restoring in the process the Vedic tradition. This naturally takes one to the immanent position of Vedanta. Sarvam khalu idam brahma. All this is Brahman. Shankara has, in all his works, also accepted this immanent aspect of Vedanta. This is called Sarvatmaka Bhava, or oneness of everything that exists. Neha nanasti kinchana, no difference whatsoever exists. So, we can conclude without saying the brilliance of Shankara as a poet. When he is giving, he used to give this kind of instruction to his disciples. So always you would find this some kind of poetry in that. So when we can give two examples like that. Drishting jnanamayam kritva pashyet brahmamayam jagat sadrishti paramodara na nasagra balokini. It's from Aparokshanubhuti. It says that, in yoga or spiritual practice, one kind of instruction is there. Keep your eye fixed on your tip of your nose. So he's saying, no, it is not called a yoga drishti, a right kind of drishti. So what is the right kind of drishti? What kind of view that you should have? Drishting jnanamayim kritva, converting the ordinary vision into one of knowledge. Pashyat brahmamayam jagat, one should view the world as Brahman itself. It is called proper drishti. Converting the ordinary vision into one of knowledge, one should view the world as Brahman itself. It is called param udara drishti. That is the noblest vision, and not that which is directed to the tip of the nose. So we can have plenty of that, this kind of thing. A Sanskrit stanza in praise of Shankara compares him to a sun whose glory dispels the darkness of this world, and whose wisdom rays, striking the sun in the sky, pale him into a moon. Those who are acquainted, however modestly, with the life and works of Shankara will readily agree with the poet's eulogy. Even after the lapse of well over 1,000 years, Shankara's writings stand undimmed and unsurpassed in their intellectual brilliance and philosophical profundity. Lucid and deep, his commentaries on the triple text of Vedanta have astonished and commanded the respect of spiritual seekers, philosophical students, and scholars for centuries. They called the prasanna and gambhira. At the same time, it is lucid, and it is deep. That kind of that language he used in his commentaries. Shankara never remained at a place for long. He went about as a peripatetic teacher. His spirit was universal. His mind was inclusive and not exclusive. He taught not merely toleration, but also dynamic acceptance. Herein lies the value of his work to us today. Wherever there is emphasis on unity, there is knowledge, whose fruit is concord and happiness and beneficence. And wherever there is an emphasis on diversity, it is ignorance and results in conflict and misery, said Shankara. We need badly today the message of that unity based on understanding and lending to concord. Let us conclude today's talk with a prayer and beautiful piece written by Shankara, that when you start your work in the morning, what should you think? So we'll conclude today's discussion with that. And still it is morning. So I think, but he is talking about dawn, I think, at the early morning. But little bit of Sanskrit is there, I'm sorry, and we'll translate that. Pratas marami ridi sangspurat atma tattvam satchit sukham paramhamsa gatim turiyam jat swapna prajagara susuptim aveti nityam tad brahma nishkalamaham nacha bhuta sangha pratar bhajami manasa vachasam agamya vacho vibhanti nikhila yadunugrahena yan neti vachaner nigama avochu tang deva devam ajam achyutam ahuragram pratar namami tamasah paramarka varnang purnang sanatana padam purushottamakyam yasmin nidam jagat ashesham asheshamurti rajvang bhujangama iva pratibhasitang vai. In the morning, I meditate within my heart on the self-effulgent Atman, the existence, knowledge, bliss absolute, the goal of the greatest ascetics, the transcendent and the eternal, who is beyond the states of waking, dream, and sleep. I am verily that indivisible Brahman and not a combination of material elements. In the morning, I worship him who is beyond the reach of mind and speech, and because of whose presence all speech becomes manifest. Him the scriptures indicate by the words, not this, as beyond all attributes. Him the sages describe as the God of all gods, eternal, immutable, and supreme. In the morning, I salute the effulgent being who is beyond all darkness, who is known as the infinite, the eternal supreme self, in whom appears the world of manifold forms like the snake superimposed on the rope. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace.
As you know, today we are observing Shankara's birth anniversary service. Swami gave the talk. Now, according to our custom, we shall serve you rice pudding. Please wait. Our devotees will bring rice pudding. Please distribute. And next Sunday will be Buddha Jayanti. I shall speak on Buddha. And as usual, we shall serve. Generally, this festival time we will serve rice pudding. And of course, afterwards there will be Zoom meeting. And 23rd May, our Toronto Swami will visit us. Tuesday, 23rd May, he will give a talk on spiritual life. So we are going to get a visiting Swami. 23rd May, Tuesday, at 8 o'clock. Thank you.